6 things high-value men never tell women. The secrets they keep. There are things high-value men will never tell you, not because they're hiding something, but because they know most people wouldn't understand. They move differently. They think differently. And if you've ever been around a man who truly has options, power, and control over his life, you know there's a certain silence to him, a mystery, a confidence that makes you wonder, what's going on in his head? Well, today, you're about to find out. But let me warn you, some of these truths might not be what you want to hear. Some of them might even change the way you see men forever. But if you're here for the truth, not fairy tales. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 6 things high-value men will never tell you, and why knowing them will change everything. Let's get into it. Part 1. They feel lonely, even when they have options. Let's get something straight. Just because a man has options doesn't mean he feels fulfilled. In fact, the more options a high-value man has, the more he realizes how rare true connection really is. You see, from the outside looking in, it seems like high-value men have it all. They can walk into a room, attract attention, pick and choose who they want. But what nobody talks about is the fact that most of these connections feel completely surface level. Sure, he can be with someone tonight if he wants to. But does she really see him? Does she know his fears, his struggles, the weight he carries? Most women assume that high-value men are emotionally unavailable. The truth, they just don't meet many people who make them feel safe enough to open up. The reality, most women like the idea of a high-value man, but few are prepared for what comes with it. A man who's built himself into someone valuable has learned one hard lesson. The more successful, the more disciplined, the more in control he becomes. The more he feels like no one truly understands him. And that kind of loneliness, you can't fix it with a random text, a pretty face, or a fun night out. Which leads us to the second thing high-value men will never tell you. They're always testing you. Part 2. They test women, and you won't know when. Here's the thing about high-value men. They don't waste time. They don't argue. They don't explain themselves over and over again. What do they do instead? They test. And you won't even know when it's happening. High-value men have worked too hard, built too much, and seen too many people come and go to just assume someone has good intentions. So instead, they create little moments, small, unnoticed tests, to see who they're really dealing with. Example 1. The loyalty test. He might mention another woman's name casually, not because he's trying to make you jealous, but because he wants to see, do you get insecure? Do you start competing? Or do you stay confident? Example 2. The respect test. He might make a mistake and see how you react. Do you belittle him? Do you roll your eyes? Or do you handle it with grace? Example 3. The patience test. He might say he's been busy, just to see, do you assume the worst? Do you demand attention? Or do you respect his time? The truth is, high-value men aren't testing you to play games. They're testing to protect themselves, because once they let a woman in, she has the power to build him up, or completely destroy him. And the women who fail these tests, they usually don't even realize it. They just notice he starts pulling away, becoming distant, or quietly disappearing from their life. And that's why the next thing they won't tell you might surprise you. High-value men struggle with the pressure of leadership. Part 3. They struggle with the pressure of leadership. Here's the part most people don't understand about high-value men. Yes, they lead. Yes, they make decisions. Yes, they take responsibility. But what no one talks about is the weight of it. See, when a man reaches a certain level, he's no longer just responsible for himself. He has employees, a business, investments, family members who depend on him, a woman who looks to him for security. And while the world sees strength, what they don't see is the pressure. Here's the truth. When a man is a leader, he doesn't get the luxury of breaking down. He can't just say, "I don't feel like doing this today." Because if he stops, everything stops. The hidden struggle. He's constantly managing expectations, solving problems, thinking 5 steps ahead. And yet, most people assume he's fine, that he's got it all under control. Even the woman in his life might not fully grasp it. She'll say things like, "You're always busy. You never have time for me," without realizing this man isn't just working for himself. He's working to create a life where she doesn't have to worry. Why he won't tell you. A high-value man will never complain about this. He won't burden you with his stress. He'll carry it in silence because that's what strong men do. But what he will notice, how you react to it. Do you make his life easier or harder? A man who has the weight of the world on his shoulders isn't looking for someone to add to his stress. He's looking for a woman who understands and stands beside him. Because here's the secret. Every strong man has moments where he feels weak. But he'll never show it to just anyone. And that leads us to the next thing he'll never tell you. He wants respect more than love. Part 4. They want respect more than love. Let me tell you something most people don't understand. If you tell a man, "I love you," he'll appreciate it. But if you tell him, "I respect you," he'll never forget it. Because here's the truth. Love is nice, but respect, that's what fuels a man. Why respect matters more. A man can be in love with a woman, but if he feels disrespected in that relationship, he'll eventually leave. Or worse, he'll stay, but he'll shut down. See, for men, respect isn't just a word, it's a feeling. It's how you talk to him in private and in front of others. It's whether you trust his decisions or constantly question him. It's whether you see him as the man he is or constantly try to change him into someone else. Here's what most women don't realize. When a man feels truly respected, he will go to war for you. He will work harder, protect more, give you everything he has. But when he feels disrespected, even if he loves you, something inside him dies. How women lose good men. A lot of women assume that if a man pulls away, it's because he lost interest. But in reality, many men walk away from women they love simply because they felt unappreciated, undermined, or constantly questioned. And the craziest part? Most women don't even realize they're doing it. You see, when a high-value man leaves, it's rarely impulsive. He's been watching, noticing, calculating for a long time. And by the time he's made his decision, there's no going back. And this brings us to the most heartbreaking truth of all. Sometimes, high-value men walk away from love they actually wanted. And that is the hardest thing of all. Part 5. They fear being truly seen, but also crave it. You ever notice how the strongest men, the ones who seem the most put together, are also the hardest to read? It's not an accident. It's survival. See, high-value men project confidence. They lead, they build, they conquer. But underneath it all, there's a part of them that wonders if anyone truly sees them for who they are. The paradox: strength versus vulnerability. A man like this has spent years, maybe decades, building himself into something great. And along the way, he's learned a painful lesson. The world respects power. The world follows strength. But the world doesn't always make room for his pain. So what does he do? He wears the mask. He stays composed. He keeps his emotions in check. Because the moment he shows weakness, he risks losing the very thing that makes him respected. Why he doesn't open up easily. The truth is, High-value men don't talk about their struggles, not because they don't feel them, but because in their world, vulnerability has consequences. A lot of women say they want a man to open up, but what they really mean is, open up just enough to make me feel close to you, but not so much that I see your flaws. And high-value men? They know this. They've opened up before, only to be judged, misunderstood, or worse, seen as weak. But here's the twist. Despite all this, what they truly crave is to be seen. To have someone who looks past the image, past the success, past the confidence, and understands the man underneath. Not someone who tries to fix him. Not someone who criticizes how he carries his burdens. But someone who can simply stand beside him and say, I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. But most women will never see that version of him, because by the time he finds someone who understands, he's already walked away from too many who didn't. Which leads us to the last thing high-value men never tell you. Sometimes they walk away from love they actually wanted. Part 6. They've walked away from love they wanted. Here's what no one tells you about high-value men. They don't just walk away from bad relationships. Sometimes, they walk away from love that felt real. Not because they stopped caring, not because they didn't want it to work, but because they knew it wasn't meant to last. Why he leaves, even when it hurts. A high-value man doesn't just think about the moment. He thinks about the long term. He's built his life on discipline, vision, and making the right choices, even when they hurt. And sometimes that means walking away from a woman he cares about, because deep down, he knows she's not right for the life he's building. The common reasons. They leave. Maybe she didn't respect him. Maybe she wanted him to be someone else instead of accepting him for who he was. Maybe she brought chaos into his world when he needed peace. Or maybe she was amazing, but not aligned with his mission. And for a man like him, purpose comes before passion. The pain of walking away. A high-value man doesn't ghost. He doesn't play games. But once he realizes that staying will cost him his peace, his vision, or his growth, he makes the hardest choice of all. And the cruelest part? He'll never explain it to you. He won't fight. He won't beg. He won't try to convince you to see things his way. He'll just leave. So if you ever loved a high-value man and wondered why he left, just know, it wasn't easy for him either. Because sometimes, the hardest thing a strong man can do is walk away from the thing he wanted most. Conclusion. The truth about high-value men, so now you know. The things high-value men never say. The truths they keep locked inside. Not because they want to deceive, but because they know most people wouldn't understand. They move differently. They think differently. And if you've ever been close to a man like this, you've probably felt it. The quiet strength, the unshakable confidence, but also the mystery, the things left unsaid. Because here's the reality. High-value men are not cold. They're not unfeeling. They're not incapable of love. In fact, they might care deeper than most. But they've also learned, through pain, through experience, through loss, that the world doesn't always reward raw honesty. So they choose silence. They choose distance. They choose to walk away rather than fight losing battles. And if you've ever been on the other side of that, if you've ever wondered why a man like this left without explanation, now you know. It wasn't that he didn't care. It was that he cared too much to stay where he wasn't understood. Final thought. What this means for you. The question now isn't about them. It's about you. Now that you know these 6 truths, what will you do with them? Will you use them to understand men better? To build stronger connections? to avoid the mistakes that push high-value men away? Or will you ignore them and keep wondering why the most successful, disciplined, and driven men seem so hard to reach? The choice is yours. Call to action. Let's talk. If this video made you think, drop a comment below. Which of these 6 truths surprised you the most? Which one do you recognize in the men you've met? And if this resonated with you, if it gave you a new perspective, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth. High-value men might not always tell you how they feel, but once you understand them, you'll never see them the same way again. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and never stop learning.